today I am super excited to be joined by Kathryn, who is actually a really dear friend of mine. We met back in university days. I think when we first met, to me, it was like an instant friendship. I mean, we're both diligent students, the great, strong, but also loved a good time. I love to go out and party as well as both being farm girls. So just being cut from the same cloth, we had a really lot of similar values and connected over a great sense of humour. We don't say so ourselves. Since that time, we've both done a lot of living. And over that time, even though you're now living in the United States, that we still maintain that connection. I feel like our friendship has evolved into something very different from those days, but a relationship I still cherish deeply. So yes, so great to be able to chat to you about grief and loss today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we really dive into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, there's a few things that I'd love for you to know about Kathryn. She left for grade school in the States. When did you? Was that 10 years ago now?
It's actually almost 11 years ago, which is really scary.
And you're still currently living there with a lovely family. And you also hold a doctorate, PhD, in psychological and brain science. That's incredible in itself. But alongside that, you've also had some really challenging experiences, some of those that we'll be talking about today. And you've recently transitioned from the world of academic research to embark on your own coaching journey and working as a mentor and a coach for women on their journey with Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Have I said that correctly?
Yeah. From there, we can just call it HG. Like once you say it once, you can just say HG after that.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to hear. I mean, in our personal conversations, I get to absorb so much wisdom from you, so I look forward to sharing that with anyone else listening and watching today. If you could start us off by, I know there's a bit of a mix of death losses and non-death losses in your experience. So I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what around those that we're speaking about today.
So, yes, I do have a PhD, but spoiler alert, I think that my own journey to motherhood taught me more than any PhD ever could. And my PhD was focused on the psychological well-being of parents during and after a high-risk pregnancy. And as fate would have it, during that PhD program, I went through my own high-risk pregnancy. But essentially, I think it's really important to talk about that as young women, the focus is being taught on how not to get pregnant. And we don't get a lot of education on how difficult it can be to get and stay pregnant and how difficult pregnancy can be. So I was not prepared for my journey to motherhood. I always had this deep sense within myself that I was meant to be a mother. And when I got to that stage in my life, I was really excited and got pregnant right out of the gate, just as I expected. No one in my family had issues getting or staying pregnant, and quickly things sort of took a turn. And this is not actually a pregnancy I've talked a lot about because this is not my first HG pregnancy. I was pregnant and quickly started to have some problems, and it appeared to be a threatened miscarriage. And basically it evolved into a suspected ectopic. And then it was a pregnancy of unknown location. So basically it was a big mess. It was nothing that I had been prepared for, and people didn't really know what was going on. And they were telling me some really, really scary things, and I felt like a ticking time bomb basically. And that was my introduction into pregnancy. That pregnancy we actually had to end the pregnancy medically. because they couldn't actually find it, but I was showing signs that I was still pregnant. So it was a bit of a disaster. So after that, we did struggle to get and stay pregnant. And when we finally did get pregnant, I was really excited when I started to feel sick. The great sign. Little did I know what was in store for me. So you mentioned Hyperemesis Gravidarum, we'll just call it HD from now on, but essentially it is a severe form of nausea and vomiting during pregnancy. It is actually life-threatening for some people. You lose the ability to eat and drink, and quite often require hospitalization and medical intervention. So I quickly became very sick. And we have this running joke in our family, it's probably not a joke, but we joke about it that I'm the 1%. And if there is a rare condition or a rare side effect or a rare complication, I'm going to have it. And it has continued. It's not just this, but so in addition to HG, I actually reacted very badly to some of the medications they put me on to try and ease my symptoms. And we would try different medications. I didn't realize that some of the side effects that were happening were actually because of the medications and not the HG. The effects built, and I eventually got to the point where I thought I need to stop taking these. I can't handle these side effects anymore, and my body went into a really extreme form of withdrawal. So I was plunged into a mental health crisis. So my first viable pregnancy took me to the absolute depths of physical, mental, and emotional health. It was probably the worst and most traumatic experience of my life. And that's not something that you hear a lot about pregnancy, because pregnancy is supposed to be enjoyable and a beautiful experience. And that's not what my experience was.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's just so much, like so many layers of elements of loss in that. And yeah, you're right. I don't think as young women, even now in our 30s, it's starting to be talked about, but even still maybe seen as something that'll happen to someone else and it's never something that's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Is that, it's not it's not the journey that you expected. I mean, yes, those smooth journeys still happen and still a possibility for some people, but not for everyone. And you just, it's really hard when life goes sideways or journeys go sideways from a 180 to what you expected, and for it to become that serious and to be in the 1%. Wow, it is absolutely just, it's quite confronting, right?
Yes, I think there were many times I didn't think I was going to make it out of that experience. So I think I would ask, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? And it's interesting because I talk a lot about victim mindset now, but that's where I was. And I think rightly so. And when a lot of us encounter these types of experiences, this loss and grief, we can take on that victim mindset. And I think it's human nature, it's totally okay. But I think the secret is you can visit it, but you can't unpack and live there. Because if you unpack and live there, you're not going to be able to get yourself. And I realized at the lowest of my low that I needed, if things were going to change, if I was actually going to get out of the situation, I needed to take the lead. And one of the things I learned is that even on your darkest day, you have the power to turn things around and change your circumstances. And it's not going to happen overnight. These can be little baby steps, but it's taking that agency. I know you were talking about agency when I joined the Rise. It's so important, and we can often look outside of ourselves for support and help, and that's really important. It's a really important part of it, but oftentimes we have to look inward, and we need to take control of our lives and say, okay, what do I need? What do I need to do at this moment to move forward and get out of this situation?
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we can explore that a bit more, because it can be, I've been there too. Like, I get it. There are definitely days where you're so deep, you're so far in the muck, and with that, like, physical, emotional, mental, all of it, we get it. Like, it feels like there is nothing that can be done, and why is this happening to me? It's not fair. Look at everyone else. what was that moment for you, and where did that impulse come from to or that realization? Was it just maybe something that you'd listened to, or did it literally come from within you? Having support around you it's amazing for all of us, and there is an element of what can we do for ourselves. What was that for you?
So I think a big part of it, I've always been a researcher even before I went to do my PhD. And even in the state I was in, I was trying to read books. I was trying to figure out what was going on. And at this point, the HD side of it had kind of been thrown out. They were just paying attention to my mental health. And they were basically thinking I was, for want of a better word, crazy. And I was looking at the bigger picture of what had gone on and started to understand how much in a health crisis my brain was. I had been malnourished, dehydrated. My brain chemistry, for whatever reason, didn't like these drugs. I'd been on a cocktail of them, and then I stopped taking them all cold turkey. So I started to figure out that the healthcare professionals were not picking up on some of the things that I was saying. And also I knew myself best, and I knew the things they were saying were not accurate for my situation. And it was actually my mum, and I can tell that she just joined. We were sitting, she flew over here, and she had HG when she was pregnant, all of her pregnancies. So she had that level of understanding about the HG, not necessarily the drug element, the issue that I was having, but just having someone that has been where you have been. I think from a support perspective, just having that person that you can talk to without judgment, and you can just vent and just feel safe. Like, she was that person for me. And we kind of figured out together that I was going to have to lead the charge of getting myself out of this. And that helps me take small steps to better my mental health during the rest of the pregnancy and get enough nutrition. She helped me with that as well. And then after that pregnancy, I actually just continued and created a whole program for myself, because if you're listening to this, you might think, oh, well, you definitely wouldn't go back to pregnancy after that experience. I didn't. But I actually had a really, really great experience my second pregnancy with HG. So taking that agency and that control back allowed me to figure out what went wrong, figure out what I needed, and create a better for myself down the track. So it was a long journey, but that moment when I was at the lowest of the low in that first pregnancy was the turning.
And I think that's and I'm sure a lot of women, mothers or would-be mothers, face that as well, is that there's never been that time in your life where you didn't imagine yourself as being a mother. Like, at some level, you've always wanted this, and perhaps always wanted more than one, but having such a horrific experience that first time round could make that prospect of like a second or a third, and having that understanding, like educating yourself, and your mum having her around you as well, like having that right support person is so key. And yeah, as you said, like a place, someone where you can be understood and not judged and not gaslit, and people actually take what you're saying as like, this is what's happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important. And I think that's so powerful with the mentoring and the coaching that you're doing now, is you've done this for yourself, and you've done your research, you're really well educated around so many levels of this, and can definitely be that person to support another woman who is maybe facing a first pregnancy or looking or wanting another, but being terrified by having to go through an experience like that again.
Yeah. Terrified is an interesting word, because it's the word I hear a lot of women who have been through HG say. And a lot of that comes from just unnecessary suffering happened for a lot of women who experience this condition. There is still a lot of stigma around HG. Historical theories suggested that it was a psychological that has been dismissed, but the stigma is still there. It's actually recent research has shown that it's genetically determined with some environmental influences. But the general lack of knowledge and understanding about HG means that a lot of women do not have the support and understanding that they need when they are encountering that. And it often come out of the blue. You can prepare for it if you don't know you're going to have it until that first pregnancy. So the first pregnancy can oftentimes be the worst because you don't have the support and understanding, you don't have the systems in place. And thinking about going through that again is terrifying. But there are things you can do, like everything in life, once you have gone through something. What can I pull from this experience that I can take forward and learn from? And if I want to go through pregnancy again, in this example, how do I do that? But the reality is also a lot of women do not go through pregnancy again. And I think that is completely understandable. A lot of women will change their family plans because of HG. And that's also an element of loss. You are grieving for the family that you thought you would have. And it's difficult because if you've gone through a pregnancy with HG and you've had a baby, a lot of your friends your age will go on to have more babies, and those are things that you'll see and be exposed to, and you're terrified, or either medically it's not safe for you to go through it again. And it's hard. I always thought that I would have 3 children. I have 2 beautiful boys, and we are done. HG is not the only reason we stopped, but it is one of them. And I know that you and I have talked about this. I always saw myself having a girl. And this is an interesting topic in the HG community because gender disappointment is something that's talked about in HG. And I don't like that term, but for want of a better term, because HG takes so much from you in terms of your journey to motherhood and the family that you thought you were going to have, when you find out that you're having a boy or a girl is not what you expected, it's such a complex reaction of, it's not, oh, I'm disappointed I'm having a boy or a girl. It's, oh, wow, I know this is the last time I'm going to go through this. I will never have that girl or that boy, or it makes things so much more complex. And when I found out my second viable pregnancy was a boy, I know you and I talked a lot about this, but I love my son and I would never change it for a world. They are amazing. But I did go through a stage of grief and processing, not because he was a boy, but because I was grieving for the girl that I thought I would have. And I know that anyone listening or watching the replay of this who's had HG or even pregnancy losses, just not going how you're expecting and knowing you're not going to go through it again, it's just an interesting experience. And one of the things I think is this journey into my HG mentor business, that is my 3rd baby. That's how I view it. And I also feel like the first pregnancy I lost was my girl. And this is kind of my dedication to her. That, that I'm doing this for her. So that is one of the ways that I cope with it. But every pregnancy loss, no matter how early or the circumstances, it stays with you. It's a form of grief that's very unique. But that's kind of how I'm approaching things. And this HG mentor business is my 3rd baby. It's very important to me, and it's a passion that I have to make sure that I support and guide women that are walking that really complex and confusing path that I once walked, and being that support that I once needed.
That's all. It's so beautiful. It's so powerful. Not what you expected. Yeah, as we talked about in personal conversations, but it really ties into that. I call it subtle layers or invisible types of grief. Definitely what you're speaking to, but it applies across the entire spectrum of grief and loss. Is just because you can't see it, or just because it wasn't something that, it depends. There's so many nuances in that, but even losing a dream and that's something that actually could have been real. Just because we can't see it, just because it didn't exist in the physical, tangible form, doesn't mean that it's not a loss. And my brain is going everywhere with all the situations that applies to. But I'm sure if anyone watching or listening, you might have heard the term of secondary loss, but I believe it goes so much broader and deeper than that. It is all those subtle things and those things that you'll be facing throughout a lifetime. I wonder if there are things, because this is a lifelong thing for you personally, whether it's seeing other parents with larger families, with 3 children that you wanted, or with mums and daughters. Do you have some kind of reaction, or is that a trigger for you? And yeah, how do you navigate that?
That is a very good question.
Oh, and I appreciate that these are always things that we can still be working with as well.
I actually know that's something that has changed a lot for me. And I think it's interesting because I can share a strategy that I actually use and that has helped me with this. And I would say, yes, it is something, it sneaks up on me. Sometimes if I have a friend that is pregnant again or has a lot of boys and she's got pregnant with a girl, there can be that, something very interesting that I do myself is, it's kind of a different way of thinking about things. So one of the things I say is not all the baggage that you carry from the past is bad. It depends how you package it. And I actually will go back and revisit places I've been at that time in my pregnancy. I did not think I was going to survive. I did not think my baby was going to survive. And now I have 2 beautiful boys. And when I feel myself grieving for something else, I use those memories to remind myself how lucky I am. And I sort of flip it around into gratitude. And I focus more on, wow, my babies, my children are healthy, they're here, I get to see them grow up. And that's what I focus on. And it kind of takes away the sting of that, I don't have that. Rather than focusing on what I don't have, I'm focusing on what I do have. And one thing I didn't mention is my first pregnancy in that really dark time, I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And unfortunately, I had a lot of information about how that level of psychological distress in the mother can be detrimental to the unborn babies. Sometimes information is dangerous if you have too much. So that was actually contributing to my stress. And we found out at 33 weeks pregnant that my baby had a brain abnormality. And I immediately blamed myself, and I still was not in a healthy mental health state. And he's fine. He's my miracle baby. But at that time, I was being told, this is abnormal. They had to do scans after he was born. And I just remind myself how lucky I am that he is so healthy and happy, and he just started summer school and he's doing amazing. He's so social. He's an amazing big brother. But I do want to mention, just in the context of grief, an experience I also had about a year ago that I used kind of in the same context as remembering that hard time during that pregnancy. A year ago, ended up in hospital with a very out of the blue heart condition that escalated from, I think within a week, I was in the ER being admitted to hospital. I had shock pads on my chest. I thought it was the end of the road for me. I've never felt so close to my own death than I did in that moment. And things that I thought about in that moment were my boys and my family, and the fact that I was sitting on this HG mentor stuff and I had not communicated it. So I remember that fear and that pain because that's what drives me. And again, it reminds me how lucky I am to be here. So anytime I feel lost or lack, I do try and turn it around that way, that there's so much to be thankful for. And I know a lot of people say that, but I can remember those times when I thought I was going to lose everything, and I use that. And that's not going to be the right formula for everyone, but I use that and it really drives me.
Absolutely, it does. I can see it in your fresh way of thinking about it. Yeah. it's very inspiring the way that you're using those experiences to propel you and this work into the world. So needed.
In terms of grief, I think it's important to remember our own mortality. I know that in several of your previous conversations, the grief experiences of the people you talked to, it really reminded them and made them focus on what really mattered. And I think when we go through loss of any kind, we need to pay attention, because after traumatic events, big life events, big losses, all too often we can sometimes slip back into kind of a default mode. And we sometimes need to remember that pain, because it's what drives us forward. And I feel like that heart problem that I had was the universe giving me a good shake, because I had not put this HG mentor stuff out there. I was sitting on it. I was doing my regular job and I was kind of doing it in the background. And that honestly was the big push that pushed me to do this full time.
It's a shame that we need those big pushes sometimes.
So I'm listening to that one. I don't want another one.
Yeah, big experiences, hard things, grief and loss will have a way of filtering out what's important, who's important in terms of relationships, but as well as what makes us feel alive and driving us towards mortality too. So I think that's a really important point to highlight too. So Jess, I have 2 more questions for you. I try and keep these to half an hour, and I know that we could talk for hours on that. I would love to hear what you might suggest or advice if someone is feeling really stuck or struggling and really they can't find that way to reclaim their agency or to make that one step or one decision. What would you say to someone like that?
So I think that's so back to something I mentioned earlier, especially in the HG community, but I think it applies to a lot of other things as well, is try and find someone who has walked the path that you were walking before. Because sometimes you need someone to just walk beside you and guide you through those times, and you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel yourself. And I'm not saying that you should everything that person says, but just having that space to be understood, to vent and to just talk through things, or even just have them there, can then give you the power to start taking agency yourself. Sometimes you need a little bit of a boost, and other people can help you with that. And a lot of people, especially in the pregnancy loss space and also HG, I think HG, we're talking about it a lot more now, but with pregnancy loss, always something that a lot of people talk about. And I remember hearing about stories of people that I knew when I was younger that apparently lost pregnancies and, it wasn't talked about. And there are a lot more people out there going through what you're going through than you realize. And it's about finding those people. I do hope I can be that person for some people, because that is what I needed. But that person might be your friend. It might be a coach. It might be a mentor. It might be a therapist. It's just finding what you need and helping you on that path. And that is agency, like reaching out for help. That is an empowered step on your journey. And if that's all you can do in that moment, ask for help. Being okay with asking for help is a big thing, because I know I struggled with that in my first pregnancy, and it did get me into a few situations I just should have asked for help earlier, and I didn't. It's not a weakness to ask for help.
And knowing yourself as best as you can to be able to assess yourself in the situation, to be able to seek the right type of help is so important. And it brings to mind for me I think of it as like a sense of borrowed hope, because when I really unpacked my own grief experiences and losses, was like things felt hopeless to me. And I would hear, just lean on hope, or hope for the best, that kind of thing. And I was like, I don't get it. And the missing piece that I found for me was that I was in a situation where, it was perfectly valid to feel like there was no hope. But what I was missing, that other people could hold that hope for me, and I could lean on that.
Even if someone has reached the light at the end of the tunnel, I just wanted to know that someone had got through it. Like sometimes that's just that bit of hope that you need. But my situation seems really real to me, and since then I've heard of people suffering from HD who have had those reactions to those medications, and there are a lot more people out there that have been through things similar to you than you realize. I think it's really important to know that.
I really like that element of choice and agency. There's Dr. Edith Eger and Viktor Frankl are two survivors of the Holocaust that maybe they were my borrowed hope for a while because they had endured the unimaginable and had gone on to live really positive, fulfilling lives. And both of them were so really highlighting that element of agency and choice. And Frankl's quote about when we can do nothing to change a situation, then we're going to challenge to change ourselves.
Yeah.
And that really brings what do we actually have control over anyway? Like there's a lot in our external world. Most of it is not just a perceived sense of control, it's not actual control. And I know you spoke about this before as well, and is something that is really pivotal or a foundation to your approach as well, is we have that element of choice. Like how do we choose to respond to something? How do we support ourselves the best when we face something incredibly challenging?
Yes, and I do, one of the things you said, I think finding a purpose to your pain is another way when you're in that really dark spot, and really that's what both of us have done. One of the things in that really dark time of my pregnancy, I thought, well, if I can get through this, I'm going to turn around and help the next person that's going through this. And so we can take the things we learn to help other people, and sometimes if that's the purpose that drives you, use it. That's exactly what you and I have done with our lives. We have gone through the depths of darkness and we're turning around and reaching a hand out to the next person. And I think that this is also really important, because having a purpose is it's such an important part of getting through the day and making
it. So much wisdom. Thank you so much. I know that these things are really complicated, and there's a lot of emotion and trauma tied up in all of this. And I just so appreciate that as you are turning it into something to help others, but I also really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us today. And before we all let you go, I would love to hear what is something that you're particularly excited about at the moment, and where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. I am excited that I have just launched my one-on-one HD mentorship and coaching program. So this is for people that need more personalized support. I can work with you one-on-one. As part of this launch, I am having free 30 minutes HG mentorship and strategy sessions. And even if you don't want to work with me, if we're not a good fit, it can be just really nice to talk to someone about your HD journey and what you've been going through. I am here to support you in whatever way that I can. And yeah, I just want you to know that you're not alone and you don't have to walk this journey alone. And my Instagram is @HGMentor, and you can also email me at Kathryn@hgmentor.com.
Amazing. I'm so excited to see how this all unfolds. It's such an amazing service and coaching and mentorship guidance for women who are now in a place where you once were. And I think that I come back to this as well, and I know you do, is that, and actually even you opened with this, is that lived experience can not always, but can be so much more valuable than a piece of paper. Not to throw any shade on your PhD.
No, people are like PhD. from what I went through. So maybe I've got to.
I think it's definitely something to be said for the wisdom that comes from lived experience. Well, amazing, Kathryn. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic evening over there, and we'll catch you all again soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.